Hello guys, welcome to another topic from general surgery, and today's topic is burn. It is very important, very simple topic, and we are going to discuss it from thorough. Okay, so expect at least 2 MCQs from burn. It is very important, and as I said, very simple topic to understand. Okay, so let's start with the definition. Burn is the injury to the tissue which is caused by different stimuli. That stimuli can be a thermal, it can be electrical, it can be chemical or radiational. Okay, and what is the result of it? It results in the protein denaturation. So if this is your surface area of the skin, then due to some external stimuli there is injury to these tissues, superficial tissues, and eventually it penetrates in the deeper tissues. But yes, there is injury to the tissue and it will cause protein denaturation in the cell, and this protein denaturation will cause thrombosis of vessels, and eventually there is inflammatory cascade. This inflammatory cascade is super added by bacterial infection, and then there is immunity which triggers by the body, and we called it as systemic inflammatory response syndrome. Systemic means different systems of your body are getting involved. Inflammatory, that means it is triggered by inflammatory cascade. Response syndrome, it is a response to the body to abnormal stimuli. So, and it results in multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. As the multiple organs of your body is getting involved and there is abnormality in the function of these different organs, it will lead to eventually death if not getting treated at time. So first thing, what are those different stimuli which causes burn? So most common, and here is your first MCQ of the day, it is thermal stimuli which is the most common cause of burn in adult as well as in children. But here is a twist. There are two types of thermal stimuli. Let me change my ink. So there are two types of thermal stimuli. First is flame and second is scald. Flame you know, and scald is due to hot liquids. Okay, so if the thermal stimuli is due to flame, then it is most common in adult, and the scald due to liquid is most common in children. Okay, so overall which is the most common stimuli? It is thermal type of burn, and in thermal there are two subtypes. First is flame, second is scald. Flame is most common in adult and scald is most common in children. Okay, so let's proceed to the second type of stimuli. So it is electrical type of burn. Electrical type of burn is again of two types. It is high voltage and low voltage. Okay, so high voltage is when the temperature is more than 1000 watts, and low voltage is when the temperature is less than 1000 watts. Now if the temperature is more than 1000 volt, then there is more chance of cardiac arrhythmia. Yeah, V is for volt, cardiac arrhythmia, and deep muscle damage or injury. Whereas low voltage stimuli causes injury to the superficial tissue, that means injury to the skin. Now what all things you need to remember around electrical type of burn? There are two types of electrical burn. First is high voltage, and in high voltage there is high risk of cardiac arrhythmia. Second is there is high risk of injury to the deeper tissues, that means injury to the muscle or damage to the muscle. And in low voltage the injury is most common to the superficial tissues, that means superficial skin. Now in electrical type of injury or electrical type of burn, one more thing is there. So electrical type of burn is the burn which caused by lightning. Okay, and there is Lightenberg effect. What is mean by Lightenberg effect? So there are like root like involvement of the skin area over the skin surface is called as Lightenberg effect, and it is seen in electrical type of burn. Okay, now one more thing you need to understand about electrical type of burn is it is the burn which we most commonly underestimate. What it means? It means in high voltage type of electrical burn, there is involvement of deeper type of tissues like muscles and bones, or there may be cardiac arrhythmia. And but the superficial skin is generally normal. There are 2 points in the electrical burn. First is entry point from where the light enters, and there is exit point from where the light exits. Now, if the entry point is in my right palm, which is the common area, and if the exit point is in my left leg, then there are more chances of cardiac arrhythmia. But the skin between those entry and exit point is absolutely normal most of the time, and that is the reason we underestimate this type of burn, even though there is damage to the deeper tissues. So in every patient of electrical burn, one need to perform one investigation. And what is that investigation? It is ECG. Why? Because even if this burn is looking normal from outside, even if there is no involvement of skin or the superficial tissues, there are more chances of cardiac arrhythmia and damage to the muscles. And how one should investigate it, whether it is presence of cardiac arrhythmia or not, it is by ECG. So one investigation which is very important in all patients of electrical burn is ECG. And yes, if patient comes to you and you did ECG, that ECG is now normal, what will you do? Will you send patient to home? No, you will admit that patient. Every electrical burn injury, even if patient is normal, patient is walking, talking, you will admit that patient. You will repeat the ECG after every 4 hours, and you will monitor that patient for 24 hours. So here is one important thing about electrical burn. Every patient of electrical burn is inpatient. You need to admit that patient. You need to perform ECG. Even if ECG is normal, you need to repeat that ECG every 4 hourly. Okay. Now, next is chemical type of burn. Chemical burn is commonly seen in industrial accidents. Okay. Again, chemical type of burn is of two types. First is acid, which is common, and second is alkali. It is severe. Why? Because acid causes coagulative type of necrosis, and alkali causes liquefactive necrosis. Now, coagulative necrosis is a type of necrosis which is generally superficial. Okay, there is formation of superficial ischar. What is ischar? Ischar is a necrotic tissue, black colored necrotic tissue, which we see in mummification. Okay, so it is a dry type of necrosis where there is formation of ischar, and that ischar prevent penetration of infection, penetration of burn to the deeper area. Now, what I all mean to say is, in acid type of, if acid is causing the burn, then there is only superficial burn because there is formation of ischar, and it is a mild type of burn. And if the alkali is causing burn, the burn is there is formation of liquefactive necrosis, and liquefactive necrosis causes deeper type of burn, and it is of more severe form. Remember this? Okay. Now, what is the first line of management one should perform if there is chemical type of burn? It is irrigation of fluid. Which fluid? Tap water at room temperature. Okay. Now next, radiation type of burn. In which patient one can see radiation burn? The patients who are undergoing treatment of cancer, or who are undergoing radiotherapy or nuclear therapy. And yes, here comes very important point about the radiation injury. It is the only type of burn which is gradual. Okay, if patient comes to you with a history of radiation, even if you see a superficial wound or the small mild amount of injury to the skin, gradually it progresses to severe form and it causes blister, infection, necrosis as radiotherapy progress. Okay, so radiation, which type of burn causes gradual injury? It is the radiation type of burn which causes gradual progress and gradual injury. Now next, friction. Why friction causes burn? Why? Because when there is a contact between your skin and a rough area, there is formation of thermal injury. Okay, thermal energy, and that thermal energy get converted into thermal burn and it causes injury. It causes necrosis of the tissue. So yes, friction also causes thermal burn. Next is cold burn. Yes, not only hot surfaces, hot liquid or hot temperature causes burn, but also cold or the temperature less than certain amount also causes burn. There are two terminologies related to cold burn. These are, first is frostbite and second is trench foot. I know these are new to you, so just pay attention behind the concept. Frostbite and second terminology is trench foot. So when we say frostbite, when the temperature is freezing, remember F for F. If temperature is freezing, that means if temperature is in minus less than 0 degree Celsius, then the phenomena we called frostbite. And if the patient is having low temperature but it is above 0 degree Celsius, then we call it as trench foot. So in trench foot, temperature is in positive even if it is less than 10 degree Celsius or less than 15 degree Celsius, but it is not in negative. It is not at the freezing point, but in frostbite it is at the freezing point, that means in the negative less than 0 degree Celsius. The line of management changes in both, in frostbite and trench foot, and that is the reason we need to ask history to the patient. What is the history, whether he is exposed to the freezing point or whether he is exposed to just cold temperature. Okay, so we will going to discuss in detail in further slides. Now here are some MCQs for you. First MCQ, which of the following is true about radiation type of burn? Let's discuss one by one. First choice is, first option is always cause full thickness damage. No, it can also cause superficial damage. Yes, there may be a chance of full thickness damage, but it's not necessary or compulsory that always radiation type of injury causes full thickness damage. It can be a superficial. Okay, so the first choice is wrong. Second is, it progress over days to weeks. Yes, we already discussed, it is only type of burn which progress over days to weeks. It progress gradually, and gradually it converts from a mild blister or mild injury, mild redness, to necrosis. So yes, option B is right. Let's discuss option C, present with immediate blistering. No, there is gradual increase from redness to blistering to necrosis. So the C is wrong. D, do not affect bone. Yeah, it can affect bone because it causes full thickness injury most of the time. There may be chances of superficial type of injury, but when there is full thickness damage, the bone can get involved. So answer here is progress over days to weeks. Second MCQ, electrical burn are most likely to cause, electrical burn are most likely to cause superficial skin damage? No, mostly it causes deep tissue damage. As I already told you, it causes damage to the deep muscles. Okay, and it also causes cardiac arrhythmia. Now, second option is cardiac arrhythmia and deep muscle injury. Yeah, this is right. See, purely cutaneous burn? No, it causes deeper tissue damage. And D option is no systemic complications. No, it causes cardiac arrhythmia when the voltage is high. So answer here will be B again. Now third question, which burn type typically present with target lesion? Yeah, which burn type causes target lesion? It is a radiation burn. It is a one-liner which causes targetoid lesion. What is targetoid lesion? You know target. So this is called as target lesion, and radiation type of injury causes target lesion. Remember this. This is a one-liner. Okay. Now let's revise which we already discussed. Thermal type of burn is caused by flame or scald. Most commonly flame seen in adults, and scald most commonly, which is caused by hot liquid, is seen in children. Yeah, it is the most common type of burn in the worldwide, and the severity depends on two factors. First is temperature and second is contact time to the tissue. Now, second, electrical burn. Electrical burn is again of two types. High voltage, we already discussed it, which is more than 1000 volt, and low voltage less than 1000 volt. Second point is injury is often deep and underestimated externally. We already discussed it. In electrical burn, most of the time there is only entry point and exit point, and when entry and exit point we define, then the tissue in between might be normal, but there is damage to the deeper muscles and to the heart. Okay, so we underestimate most of the time electrical injury, and that is the reason every electrical injury patient should get admitted, should get ECG done, and even if first ECG is normal, you need to repeat ECG after gradual period of time. Now, what are the risks when patient is having electrical type of burn? It is arrhythmia and myoglobinuria. What is myoglobinuria? Myoglobinuria is a muscle damage. Okay, when there is muscle damage, there is release of protein from the muscle, which is myoglobin, and this myoglobin escapes body from the kidney, so we call it as myoglobinuria, and the result of myoglobinuria is acute kidney injury. Okay, there is entry and exit wound with the central necrosis. When there is high voltage electrical burn, it causes compartment syndrome. Here is another terminology for you, compartment syndrome. What is compartment syndrome? Anybody? Compartment syndrome is the situation where when we divide the body in different compartments, for example, a thigh compartment, a leg compartment, abdominal compartment, thoracic compartment, these are different compartments of the body. When the pressure in that compartment raises above normal, then there is decrease in the perfusion of the blood. Let's discuss in detail. If this is a vessel and these are other components of your compartment, this is one compartment, then when there is rise in the pressure in particular compartment, let's take the example of burn. In case of burn, there is increased extravascular fluid due to leaky capillaries. Okay, if there is increased fluid in that compartment, then it pressurizes this vessel, and the pressure created when it increases above normal, then it prevents or it don't allow vessel the fluid inside the vessel to escape outside. So there is increased pressure inside the compartment, and this increased pressure will compress the vessel, will compress the muscles, will compress the vessels, and it will lead to necrosis of all this part, and we call it as compartment syndrome. Then what is the treatment of compartment syndrome? There is one should release that pressure, and how one should release that patient? It is called as fasciotomy. Okay, so we take a nick over the fascia. If this is the fascia of this compartment, we'll take the nick and we allow this fluid to escape outside. Gradually this pressure inside will get normalized and the normal physiology of the compartment will regain. Now This is compartment syndrome, and the compartment syndrome is most commonly seen in electrical type of burn. This is one more MCQ point you need to remember. Now, third is chemical burn. I already told you chemical burn is of two types, acid burn and alkali burn. So, if acid is causing burn, it causes coagulative necrosis, and if alkali is causing burn, it causes liquefactive necrosis. Liquefactive necrosis is more severe. Why? Because it penetrates inside the deeper tissues. So, alkali causes deeper damage and it requires prolonged irrigation. Now, radiation burn. Radiation burn is caused by ionizing radiation which are released from radiotherapy and nuclear exposure. It is insidious in onset, it progresses from days to weeks, and it delays healing and causes targetoid lesion. As I already told you, it is MCQ one liner for you. Remember, radiation injury is the one, radiation type of burn is the one which causes targetoid lesion over the skin. Also, it causes DNA damage. Now, cold burn. Cold burn is of two types, frostbite and trench foot, but severe is frostbite because the temperature is less than 0 degree Celsius here, and one need to take the patient to emergency and need to do rapid rewarming. Okay, the treatment of frostbite is rapid rewarming. Remember the word rapid. Okay, whereas the treatment of trench foot is slow rewarming. Rapid rewarming will damage the patient who is having trench foot. Now, here comes again some MCQs about when to refer patient to the higher center. So, whenever patient comes to you at PHC, at primary healthcare center level, you cannot manage every one patient there. Okay, many times you need ICU, many times you need a specialist like pediatric for pediatric patients, plastic surgeon, even when there is large amount of surface area is getting involved, or ICU setup, and that is the reason we refer these patients to the higher center. So, ABA, American Burn Association, gives some guidelines when to refer patient to the higher center, and this is very important area from which MCQ can be asked. So, let's discuss one by one about when to refer patient to the higher center. First MCQ here comes 4-year child. Every child we refer to the higher center. So, okay, let's discuss 4-year-old child with 12% body surface area, superficial partial thickness burn should be managed as outpatient, referred to burn center, observed 24 hours and then discharged, and needs only cellular sulfadiazine. As I already told you, every child having burn, we refer him to the special burn centers or higher centers. Okay, so answer here will be B. Next MCQ, which of the following is not a criteria for burn center referral? And options are burn involving face and hands. So let me tell you some rough criteria. We'll going to discuss it on slide, but let's discuss here only. So the first thing, if patient is involving, if there is involvement of face, hands means sole, okay, hands, foot and perineal area and genital area, then we'll refer patient to burn centers, special burn centers. Second, if patient is child, okay, if there is involvement of non-accidental injury, that means if you suspect child abuse, if you suspect dowry, or if you suspect any kind of situation when there is non-accidental burn, then we refer these patients to the higher center. Also, if there is full thickness burn, and full thickness burn involving around 5% of surface area, okay, full thickness burn involving more than 5% of surface area. If there is partial thickness burn involving more than 20% of surface area. Okay. If patient is having comorbidities and severe burn. And what are the comorbidities? It can be diabetes mellitus, it can be hypertension, it can be heart disease. So all these patients will require ICU setup to manage, or the specialist to manage these patients, and only surgeon is not can fulfill the all requirements. So we need to refer him to the higher center. And 7 criteria is when there is involvement of polytrauma, like if patient is having major fractures. What are the major fractures? Fracture to the shoulder, fracture to the tibia, fracture to or a dislocation of the hip. If there is involvement of polytrauma or the major fractures, then also will refer him to the higher center. Also, if patient requires surgery, that means debridement, or patient having compartment syndrome will require fasciotomy eventually. So all these patients who you thought that gradually this patient will need the surgery, then we refer him to the higher center. Okay, so let's discuss this MCQ. Which of the following is not criteria for burn center referral? So the first option here is burn involving face and hands. Yes, we'll refer him to the higher center. Second is electrical injury with arrhythmia. Yeah, I forgot you to tell one more point about referral. Any patient having electrical burn or chemical burn or inhalational burn, all these types of burn, if you suspect, then we will refer these patients to the higher center. So here comes electrical injury with arrhythmia. Yeah, we will refer him to the higher center. Isolated first degree burn with more than 15% of total body surface area. As I told you, if there is first degree burn and patient is having more than 20% of involved surface area, then only we'll refer him to the higher center. So this is the wrong option. We'll not refer him to the higher center. We'll manage him to only primary healthcare center. And the D option is any burn associated with inhalational injury. Yes, electrical injury, chemical injury and inhalational injury. We'll refer him to the higher center. Why? Because inhalational injury patient will require intubation, elective intubation, not in emergency. Will intubate him electively. Okay, and what is the reason? Because there is risk of glottic edema, okay, or subglottic edema or laryngeal edema, and that is the reason in emergency the intubation can be difficult. So if there is you suspect inhalational injury or inhalational burn, then we'll intubate this patient electively, even if patient is conscious and oriented. Okay, now the next MCQ, according to ABA, the referral is required in all except. Again similar question, and the options are full thickness burn of more than 5% of surface area. Yes, we'll refer him to the higher center. Second option is chemical burn requiring debridement. Here patient is having chemical burn as well as he is requiring surgery, so we'll refer him to the higher center. Third option is minor scalds in adults with diabetes. Now patient is having diabetes, so patient is having comorbidity, but the scald here is minor, so we will manage this patient as outpatient, okay, and will not refer him to the higher center. And the last option is circumferential limb burn. Circumferential limb burn patient will land up into compartment syndrome, and so he will require surgery, so we'll refer him to the higher center. So answer here will be minor scalds in adults and diabetes. Now let's revise what we have already discussed. So on the basis of extent and depth of tissue, we'll refer him to the higher center when there is involvement of partial thickness burn involving more than 10% of total body surface area, when the age of patient is less than 10 or more than 50. That means when the patient is child or old age person. Okay, so when the involved area is more than 10% partial burn, but the person is child or he is elder person, then we'll refer him to the higher center. But when he is adult, then the involved surface area should be more than 20%. And now we are discussing all about this is about partial thickness burn, but when there is involvement of full thickness burn, then even if the involved area is more than 5%, then we'll refer him to the higher center. So you need to remember 10, 20 and 5. Okay, 10 is for adults and 10 is for children and elderly, 20 is for adult and 5 is for full thickness burn. Okay, we'll discuss about partial and full thickness burn in upcoming slides, so we can differentiate between them. Okay, and on the basis of anatomical location, if the involved surface area is on the face, hands, feet, genitalia, perineum or the major joints, then also we'll refer him to the higher centers. Then on the basis of mechanism, as I already told you, if the patient is if there is involvement of chemical burn, electrical burn or inhalational burn, then also we'll refer him to the higher center. And what are the special situations? When there is when the patient is having comorbidities like diabetes, heart disease, and if there is associated trauma like polytrauma with the burn or the pediatric burn, then we'll refer him to the higher center. And the social factors include non-accidental injury, and the example is child abuse. If patient is or you suspect that this is not the accidental injury, this is something which is non-accidental, then also we'll refer him to the higher center. Now the next slide is about classification of burn. It is very important subtopic, so pay attention. There are total 4 degrees of burn. Okay, let's summarize it here only. So there are total 4 degrees of burn: first degree, second degree, third and fourth degree. Now remember, in second degree there are 2 subtypes. What are they? It is superficial and deep. Okay, now remember the terminologies. First degree burn is called as epidermal burn. In second degree burn, there is involvement of epidermis plus dermis. Before that, let me tell you some basic things about anatomy of the skin. Skin involves 4 layers. First is epidermis, second is dermis, third is subcute and fourth is muscles. And now this dermis we divide again into papillary dermis and reticular dermis. Papillary dermis means there are papilla and reticular dermis is linear. Okay, so this is your epidermis, this is your dermis which has 2 parts, papillary dermis and reticular dermis, and there is subcute which involves fat, and behind that is the muscle. So when there is involvement of only epidermis, we call it as first degree burn. When there is involvement of dermis along with the epidermis but only papillary dermis, then there is secondary type of second degree burn, but it is superficial. So second degree superficial is involving papillary dermis, and when there is involvement of epidermis, papillary dermis plus reticular dermis, then we call it as second degree but deep type of burn. Okay, so remember, you got the point. First degree burn involves only epidermis, second degree burn we divide it into superficial and deep. Superficial type of second degree burn involves papillary dermis, and superficial type of deep burn involves papillary plus reticular dermis. Now if it penetrates to the subcute, then we call it as third degree burn, and if it goes to the muscle, then we call it as muscles or bone, then we call it as fourth degree burn. Now let's discuss in detail one by one. First degree burn. First degree burn involves only epidermis. Okay, it involves only epidermis. The skin will look red in color, it will be painful. Pay attention to each and every word because each and every word is MCQ here. Okay, so remember, first degree burn involves only epidermis. It looks red in color, it is painful, there is no blister in first degree burn. Okay, and what is this classical example? It is sunburn. Okay, and it heals within 7 days with no scar. Now, which type of MCQ can be framed here? Sunburn is a type of which degree? It is a first degree burn. Okay, now second degree burn. Second degree burn, we divide it into two subtypes. Second degree burn superficial and second degree burn deep. So superficial involves papillary dermis. Okay, and how it looks? There is presence of blister. What is blister? Blister is like bulla. Okay, so there is presence of blister, the skin will be red, it will be moist, it will be very painful, and it heals within 14 days. There will be minimal scar. Okay, so MCQ one can frame around it is most painful burn. Which type? It is superficial second degree burn. Okay, got you? Now second degree deep burn, which involves epidermis plus papillary dermis plus reticular dermis. So the skin will be pale here, it will be dry, it will be less painful. Why? Because nerves are getting affected, and it will heal in more than 21 days, and sometimes one need graft also. Okay, so MCQ is which partial burn may need grafting. So every word is important in MCQ. He is asking may need grafting, so it is a deep second degree burn, and if they have given compulsory need grafting or the grafting is compulsory, then the answer would be third degree burn. Okay, so if it may need grafting, then it is deep second degree burn. Now third degree burn. Third degree burn, as I already told you, it involves epidermis plus dermis, both papillary plus reticular dermis, and subcute, and that is the reason we called it as full thickness burn. Okay, the skin will be leathery here, dry, charred, and it will be painless. Okay, and what is the reason? All nerves are getting affected, so that is the reason the third degree burn will be painless. It compulsory needs graft, and there is no spontaneous healing. Okay, painless burn with charred skin is third degree burn. Again, let's revise it from the scratch. First degree burn, only epidermis, the skin will be red, dry, there will be blanching. Here is new term. What is blanching? If you press your skin, like if this area is having a burn, first degree burn, and when I press over this area, there will be paleness over this area, and as I release the pressure, that area will again get red. Okay, so it is called as blanching, and it is present in first degree burn. Okay, the area will be painful, there is hypersensitivity, no blisters in first degree burn, capillary refill will be brisk. What it means? Capillary refill means the area which is getting filled by the capillary, leaky capillaries, and that fillness is getting increased, or increased means the time will get decreased, and that's why we call it as brisk. Okay, so capillary refill will be brisk in first degree burn. Now second degree burn is superficial or deep. In superficial, there will be involvement of papillary dermis. The skin will be red or pink, it will be moist, very important word, it will be soft, and yes, this is the skin which will have blisters. It will be very painful. Again MCQ, which type of burn is very painful, most painful? It is second degree superficial type of burn, which is very painful. Okay, there will be capillary refill brisk. Again, it heals in 10 to 14 days with scars. Okay, no grafting is needed in second degree burn, and yes, as I already told you, most painful burn is superficial second degree burn. Now second degree deep type of burn, it involves reticular dermis. So from the start it involves epidermis plus papillary dermis from reticular to reticular dermis. So second degree burn involves reticular dermis. The skin will be pale, waxy, dry, leathery. All these words are important because this is the first subtype which will be pale. It will be waxy, it will be dry and not moist. Second degree superficial was moist and it will be leathery. The skin will be less painful. I am not saying it will be not painful. Not painful will be third degree. It will be less painful. Okay. Capillary refill will be sluggish or absent here. It heals in more than 21 days and there can be hypertrophic scar and it may need graft. What is hypertrophic scar? When wound heals, when it heals by normal scarring, there will be minimal scar. When it heals with minimal but more than minimal scarring, then it will be hypertrophic scar. That means scar is within the edges of the wound but it is more than normal. But when it crosses your wound area, we called it as keloid. Okay. Now about second degree burn, it may need graft or may not need. Now partial thickness burn with slow healing is a deep second degree burn, remember. Now third degree as we already discussed, it is full thickness. Why? Because it involves all the layers like epidermis, entire papillary and reticular dermis and subcute. It will be white, it will be charred, dry and leathery. Pale was second degree deep and white will be third degree burn. Okay. So MCQ point, it will be painless, leathery and there will be no capillary refill. Okay. No blisters and will not heal spontaneously. Every third degree burn will require graft. Okay. So here we compile the table. First degree burn is red, dry and painful with no scar. Second degree superficial is moist, blister, painful with and no graft will be required. Second degree deep will be pale, dry with less pain and might require grafting. Third degree is the one which will be charred, painless and will require always graft, and the fourth degree is the one which will be black in color and there will be involvement of muscle and bone. Okay. Now let's solve some more MCQs. Burn shock is best described as a combination of, so here is a new concept about the pathophysiology of the burn. So when patient is having burn, there are the chances that he will land up into two types of shock. The most common type of shock which we see in burn patient is hypovolemic shock and the second type of shock is distributive shock. So we will discuss about the shock in the subtopic shock which is from the general surgery. So just remember, in burn there are two types of shock one can see. First is hypovolemic shock because capillaries are leaky and the skin loses its semi-permeability, so there is evaporation of the fluid from the skin and it will causes hypovolemic shock. And second is distributive shock. Why? Again because the capillaries are leaky, there is extravasation of the fluid from the capillaries and it will cause distribution of fluid to the peripheries. Okay. So in burn patient there will be two types of shock. First is hypovolemic and second will be distributive shock. So answer here will be C. Okay. Next question is, what is the main mediator responsible for increased capillary permeability and what are these mediators? All of them. These are histamines, bradykinins, TNF alpha. Okay. All these mediators will cause increased capillary permeability in burn patient. So answer here will be D, all of the above. Which of the following is not metabolic change seen in post major burn? So In post major burn there will be hypermetabolism, that means more than normal body need to act, and we call it as hypermetabolism. Okay, so yes, hypermetabolism will be there. There will be increased catabolism. Why? Because body need to work hard to overcome the fight and fright situation, and that is the reason there will be catabolism in the body. Then there will be increased insulin resistance. Is it so? No. Why? Because in any fight and fright situation, that means when body needs something extra, something more, then always there will be insulin resistance which will get increased, okay, and not decreased. So here answer will be C. And the last option is increased gluconeogenesis. Yes, gluconeogenesis will be there. Why? Because body now needs more glucose, so liver will make more glucose and there will be increased gluconeogenesis. Now we will be discuss what body does when there is burn. Now there are different responses from the body in a different mean time. Okay, so initially in the first 24 hours there will be shock, okay, burn shock, and we already discussed there are two types of shock one can see in the burn patient. First is hypovolemic shock and second is distributive shock. So by hypovolemic shock, because there is massive plasma loss due to capillary leak, and by distributive shock, due to all these inflammatory mediators which are going to released from the capillaries, and these are histamine, prostaglandin, bradykinin, TNF alpha. It causes vasodilation and increased permeability of the capillaries, which will cause distribution of the fluid from intracellular compartment to the extracellular compartment. Now the fluid in the extracellular compartment is increased and the fluid inside the capillaries is now less, and as it goes back to the heart, gradually it will cause decreased preload. Okay, that means there is less amount of volume going to the heart and it will result in less amount of output. Okay, why? Because if input is low, less amount of output, so cardiac output will be decreased. Okay, as a result of it, there will be, as the distribution of fluid is from inside to outside from the leaky capillaries or increased capillary permeability, there will be hemoconcentration, also decreased cardiac output. As I already told you, if the input is less, output also will be less. Again there will be peripheral vasoconstriction because body tries to compensate it by vasoconstriction, as fluid inside the vessel is already less, so the body will compensate it by vasoconstriction and increase peripheral vascular resistance. Now second terminology here comes is systemic inflammatory response syndrome. Is body's response to the inflammatory or the fight and fright situation, and when SIRS happens, it happens only when the involved surface area, body surface area is more than 20%. Okay, and that is the situation where there will be release of cytokines and it will cause systemic inflammatory response syndrome. There will be increased capillary permeability and there will be loss of fluid to the outside, that means in the third space. This extravascular space we call it as third space. Okay, there will be activation of the complement and coagulation pathway and it resembles sepsis even if infection is not there. So within 24 hours body react as if there is presence of infection, as if there is presence of sepsis even if sepsis is not there. Okay, so eventually patient will got sepsis, patient will got superadded infection via bacteria, but within 24 hours also body will act like there is major infection inside the body because of presence of inflammatory response. Okay, now third thing is metabolic phase. Metabolic phase will start after 24 to 48 hours, and how body reacts in metabolic phase, there will be hypermetabolism. Okay, and in hypermetabolism there will be release of hormones like catecholamines and cortisol. There will be increased basal energy expenditure. If normal person requires 1% of energy to breathe, to walk, to do day-to-day life activities, then in case of burn, body will need more energy to compensate what happens around it, and that is the reason there will be increased basal energy expenditure to more than 200%. Okay, there will be muscle wasting as patient is having damage to deeper muscles. Okay, there will be hyperglycemia. Why? Because now there is insulin resistance. As I already told you, in any fight and flight situation there will be insulin resistance. What is mean by insulin resistance? Insulin resistance means these cells are having the receptors to use insulin, and when these cells use insulin, there is metabolism of the glucose inside the cell. But when these cells have resistance to use or to accept or to recognize the insulin, then there is accumulation of glucose inside the cell. This glucose then eventually goes inside the vessel, but body is not able to use this glucose to form the ATP, and that is the situation we call it as insulin resistance. That means insulin is present, but body is or the cell is not ready to recognize, or these receptors are not ready to recognize that insulin, or not work how it normally need to. Okay, now second response will be immunological effect. In immunological response, the body will have gradually immunosuppression. That means something is causing harm to the immunity due to damage to different immunological factors. That means the cell mediated immunity is getting damaged, and there will be immunosuppression. There will be increased risk of infection as a result of immunosuppression, and body will be susceptible to the multiple organ dysfunction. Okay, now also there will be electrical shift, because normal sodium potassium pump which is present on the cell is getting damaged. Okay, now normally there is more potassium inside the cell and more sodium inside the vessels, but due to damage to these pumps, there will be leakage of potassium outside the cell, which will cause hyperkalemia, and leakage of sodium inside the cell, which will cause hyponatremia. Okay, and gradually there will be pulmonary vascular resistance and GI ischemia. Now here comes next point about the burn, and it is rule of 9. Since slide 1 I am telling you total body surface area. How I know how much amount of body surface area is involved? Okay, so to measure the total body surface area, there is rule of 9 given by a scientist called as Ballack. Okay, and it is applicable only for adult. Now if this is a body, okay, then we divide this body into different compartments. Now here head and neck, if both head and neck is involved, we call it as 9%. Okay, if each upper limb is involved, then we call it as 9%. If there is involvement of chest, then we called it 9%. If there is involvement of abdomen, anterior plus posterior. Okay, so anterior chest 9%, posterior chest 9%, anterior abdomen 9%, posterior abdomen 9%. Got it? Now again, if there is involvement of anterior posterior limb, then it is 9 plus posterior anterior plus posterior differently 9% each. Okay, and anterior again in the left limb, anterior plus posterior, there will be 9%, and the perineal area we give 1%. So when you add all this, it will be 100%. So you need to mug up this, because many times they ask MCQ how much total body total body surface area is getting involved. If like head and neck is involved, or the trunk, upper trunk is involved, or the lower trunk is involved, or anterior involved, posterior involved. They can frame MCQ according to this. So remember the rule of 9 given by Wallach, and it is applicable only for adult. Now in children we use a Browder and Lung chart, okay, and according to it they have given 18% to just head and 14% to lower limb. Why? Because children have larger head compared to their body. So in adult only 9% is given to the head and neck, but in children they have given 18% to the head and 14% to the lower limbs, and rest all is the same. Now when patient of burn is presented to you and patient is having more than 15% of total body surface area involved, then you need to start resuscitation, okay. And how much amount of fluid one should give or administer in the patient of burn is given by Parkland formula. So Parkland says add 4 ml into total body weight in kgs of the patient into percentage of total body surface area involved. Now, and the product, what amount, all this amount you divide it into 2 halves. Give first half in first 8 hours and give second half in next 16 hours. So this is for first 24-hour resuscitation, okay. Now we will take an example. If patient is of 70 kg, so 4 ml into 70 kg, let's say, and if there is involvement of 40% of total body surface area, okay. So the product of this will be 11,200. Now we'll divide this 11,200 into 5,600 first half and 5,700 second half. Now this 5,600 we give in first 8 hours and next 16 hours will give 5,600. So remember this Parkland formula, and nowadays this Parkland formula is modified as modified Parkland formula, and modified Parkland formula says instead of 4 take multiplier as 2, okay. So modified Parkland formula says 2 into body weight in kgs into total body surface area, okay. Remember this. And nowadays we don't use Parkland formula, this is only for theory purpose. So in practically we use modified Parkland formula. If they ask you in the MCQ according to Parkland formula, then you have to use 4 into remaining part like kg and total body surface area. But if they ask you by modified Parkland formula, then you will take multiplier of 2 and not 4, okay. So here will the formula will be 2 into kg into total body surface area, and then solve the MCQ. Now there comes one more formula in the resuscitation of the burn patient, and that is Brooks, okay. So Brooks said one should not only give crystalloid, and yeah, I forgot to tell you that in Parkland formula you give only crystalloid to the patient, and what is the crystalloid of choice? It is Ringer's lactate in adult, okay. But in children you need to provide glucose in the form of dextrose, okay. So in children there will be addition of glucose, but in adults you will not provide glucose to the patient, you will give only Ringer's lactate, okay. Now we were discussing about the Brook. So Brook said don't give only crystalloid, add some colloid also, but add colloid after 24 hours, not within 24 hours, okay. And that is the reason modified Brook formula comes into picture, and Brook formula is similar to the modified Parkland formula, which is 2 into kg weight into percent of total body surface area. So Brook formula is similar to modified Parkland formula, but Parkland told only about crystalloid, Brook told give crystalloid plus colloid, but provide colloid only after 24 hours, okay. Now what are the indicators when to stop resuscitation? it's not the thing like you have started resuscitation to the patient and then you forget about that patient. It's not the thing. If you started resuscitation, you need to monitor the patient, because there can be a possibility of fluid overload. Okay, so to avoid fluid overload, or many time patient is dry, he will need more fluid, which you are providing is not sufficient to him. So if this is the case, then you need to monitor the patient by two indicators, and these indicators are urine output. Okay, first, very important, if patient is having urine output of at least 0.5 ml per kg, okay, in adult, and in children 1 ml per kg. For adult, remember 0.5 ml per kg, that means if patient is of 70 kg, then 0.5 into 70, 35 ml per hour. Okay, this is for hour, per kg per hour. So if patient of 70 ml is having per hour 0.5 ml of urine, that means per hour he is having 35 ml of urine. That means you are giving correct resuscitation to the patient. Okay, but if it's less than 35, then you need to increase the flow of resuscitation. Okay, and if it's more than 35, then you need to decrease the flow. Why? To avoid fluid overload. So for adult it is 0.5 ml per kg per hour, and for children it is 1 ml per kg per hour. Okay, now Parkland and modified Brook will compare between two. Parkland said give only RL, and Brook said RL plus colloid after 24 hours. Okay, the volume how we calculate by this formula where the multiplier is 2, and in Brook the multiplier is, sorry, in Parkland the multiplier is 4, and in Brook the multiplier is 2. Where to start? Start from the point of injury. So if the patient is having injury at 4 o'clock, 4 am, and he presented to you at 6 am, then you will not take the time from 6 am, you will consider the time from 4 am, that means from the point of injury. Okay, now about inhalational injury. Inhalational injury is important topic, because we need to refer each and every patient of inhalational injury to the higher center. And one more thing about inhalational injury is you need to intubate this patient, okay, electively. And how you will suspect that patient is having inhalational injury? There are certain signs, and these are, first and foremost, if there is hoarseness of voice, if patient is having difficulty in breathing, if there is facial burn, if there is singing of nasal hairs, that means burn to the nasal hairs, or if there is glottic, subglottic or laryngeal edema, okay, or if there is history of burn in the closed room, then the chances of inhalational injury are more, and at that time you need to intubate patient electively, because when there is glottic or subglottic edema, then intubation will be difficult. So you will intubate this patient electively. Second important thing, there is a chances of carbon monoxide poisoning in inhalational injury, and carbon monoxide is having 200 times more affinity to the oxygen compared to the hemoglobin compared to oxygen. So when patient is having carbon monoxide poisoning, you need to give him 100% of oxygen. Why? Because carbon monoxide binds with Hb, and this carbon monoxide is having affinity to the Hb compared to O2, which is 200 times more. Okay, so when there is O2 and when there is carbon monoxide, Hb will bind with carbon monoxide and not with O2. So you need to provide more O2, and in these patients you will provide 100% of O2 if you suspect carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay, now how to take care of wound in burn patient? So there are different methods to do dressing in burn patient. If patient is having superficial burn, you just apply moisturizer. There is no need of dressing as such, okay, because it heals spontaneously. But if patient is having partial thickness burn, there is need of agents like silver sulfadiazine or hydrocolloid, because there is more chance of getting infection by keeping wound open. And if patient is having full thickness burn, then obviously he will require grafting. Just dressing will not be sufficient. Now there are two types of grafting. First is split thickness skin grafting and second is full thickness graft. Now in case of split thickness graft, this is epidermis, this is papillary dermis, and this is reticular dermis. So in case of split thickness skin grafting, you take only epidermis plus papillary dermis, that means superficial dermis. But in full thickness grafting, you take epidermis plus deep type of papillary dermis plus reticular dermis. Okay, so if only this part is used, we call it as superficial thickness skin graft, and if deep dermis is also taken, then we call it as full thickness skin graft. Okay, so yeah, this is all about it. And we mesh the graft if we need to cover more surface area. So what is meshing? We mesh this, we make pores in between this graft so that the surface area will get enlarged. Okay, and we do it when there is large surface area is involved in the burn. Now what are the complications of burn? We have already discussed about the complications. Most important is hypovolemic shock when patient is within the 24 hours. So within 24 hours in early phase, the most common type of complication is hypovolemic shock. But if patient survives after 24 hours, then the most common complication is sepsis. Okay, that means septic shock. Other complications are contracture to the bones, contracture to the joints, hypertrophic scar, then acute respiratory distress syndrome, acute kidney injury, curling ulcer. This is the type of ulcer which is most commonly seen in duodenum after burn. So remember, curl and burn as it. Okay, so it is most commonly seen in duodenum. Why? Because there is ischemia to the GI mucosa, and this ischemia will cause ulcer. Okay, now it is most commonly seen in duodenal area. Okay, how to prevent this infection? By asepsis, by daily wound dressing, by topical antibiotics, and the most common antibiotic we use in burn patient is a silver sulfadiazine. Okay, we'll use graft, we'll give trans prophylaxis to the patient, and by giving nutritional support. Now let's discuss some one-liners which we already know in detail. First degree burn is painful and third degree burn is painless. Fluid resuscitation start only if the involved body surface area is more than 15% in adults, and in children it is 10%. Okay, remember. Now burn wound infection is the most common cause of death after first week, but within first week it is hypovolemic shock. Carbon monoxide poisoning we treat by 100% oxygen. Silver sulfadiazine is a topical burn dressing because it acts as antibiotic also in burn patient. Graft needed for third degree burn compulsory. Okay, and in second degree deep burn the graft may be needed. Full thickness burn is leathery, dry and insensate. There is no sensation, there is no pain in full thickness burn, and most reliable end point of resuscitation is urine output. Now here comes a case, interesting case about frostbite and trench foot. Okay, so one soldier presented to us with the complaints of having these different changes to his foot. He was rescued from the camp where he was exposed to he is exposed to the cold climate. Okay, and my resident thought, yes, the patient was exposed to the cold climate, so it will be a frostbite. But no, why? Because he has given the history of exposure to the cold climate, but he said that he was exposed to the wet shoes, wet cloths for more than 18 hours, but not to the freezing point. So as I already told you, frostbite happens only when patient exposed to the temperature less than 0 degree Celsius. So it's not frostbite, it's trench foot. So that is the case. So it is not the frostbite, it is a trench foot, as patient was not exposed to the freezing point, he is exposed to the wet cold. And how to differentiate between them? In frostbite, the skin will be dry and it is there will be exposure to the snow, and in trench foot there will be exposure to the wet and cold climate, okay, but wet climate, not to the freezing point. Skin will be soggy, swollen and painful in the trench foot, but in frostbite it will be hard, waxy, black and pale, okay. So the patient of trench foot will have pain since start, but the patient of frostbite will not have pain since start. He will start to have pain only when we start reforming to the patient, only when we'll start management to that patient. So what is the pathophysiology behind the frostbite? It is, in case of frostbite, there is ice formation inside the cell which will cause thrombosis to the vessel, and that is the reason we need to start rewarming rapidly, okay. And only when we'll start rewarming to those foot there will be pain, okay, but the patient of trench foot will have pain since start. Now the resident was asking whether the management will be similar or different. So yes, management will be absolutely different, because in frostbite we need to rewarm patient at 37 to 39 degree Celsius rapidly, but in trench foot the rapid rewarming will be harmful to the patient, it will worsen the injury. So in trench foot we'll rewarm the patient gradually, okay, over the period of time. How to manage these patients? In frostbite there will be fast rewarming at 37 to 39 degrees Celsius, but in trench foot there will be gradual rewarming, okay. Wet bearing will be avoided in the frostbite, but one can do wet bearing in trench foot. The dressing will be sterile and will cover all the blisters. The blisters are rare and scale will be macerated in the trench foot. There is need of antibiotic always in the frostbite, but only when the risk of infection is there, will provide antibiotics to the trench foot patient. How to differentiate between them? If the temperature is above 0 degree Celsius, which is non-freezing, we call it as trench foot, but FR for FR, freezing point, is seen in frostbite, okay. There will be prolonged wet exposure in the trench foot, but the exposure is dry because there is icing in the frostbite. Vasoconstriction is seen in trench foot, and ice crystal formation is seen in frostbite. There is mottled, soggy and swollen skin in trench foot, which is pale, waxy and hard due to ice formation again in the frostbite. There will be pain since start in the trench foot, but pain only start after rewarming in frostbite patient, okay. Now we have already discussed this chart of different types of injury. Now we'll move on to the management of complications. So which of the following is the most common cause of death in burn patient after 1 week? We have already discussed the most common cause of death after 1 week is the sepsis, okay. So next question, curling ulcer is best prevented in the burn patient by, if the patient is having curl ulcer, then start enteral nutrition. This is the only option you have to prevent or to treat curl ulcers with PPI, okay. So in patient having curling ulcer will start early enteral nutrition with PPIs. Third question is, what is the hallmark feature of sepsis in burn patient? So hallmark feature of sepsis. So what are the features and different symptoms in case of sepsis? These are tachycardia, hypothermia and organ dysfunction. Straightforward, simple question. So we come to the last few slides. What are the complications of burn? We have already discussed in the first phase there will be burn shock, and these are the of two types. First is distributive shock and second is hypovolemic shock. Okay, why? Because there will be capillary leak and airway edema. Okay, there will be hypothermia in case of uh, hypovolemic shock. Why? Because there is distribution of fluid from the intracellular to extracellular fluid, and it will cause vasoconstriction, and eventually that will cause hypothermia to the patient. In intermediate phase, that is between 3 to 7 hours, there will be more chances of infection and sepsis. Only when the involved body surface area is more than 30 degrees Celsius, there will be immunosuppression. Okay, and what are the most common organisms that are involved in the sepsis? These are Pseudomonas, methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus, Klebsiella and Acinetobacter. Curling ulcer is most commonly seen in duodenum. And in late phase, there will be scarring and keloid. Now, what is the difference between hypertrophic scar and keloid? Hypertrophic scar, if this is the area of wound, then hypertrophic scar remains in between the lines of wound, but keloid spread beyond the boundaries. Okay, keloid spread beyond the boundaries. Keloid genetic predisposition is present in the keloid, but genetic predisposition is not there in the hypertrophic scar. So hypertrophic scar is reversible, but keloid is not reversible, it is progressive. So how we prevent it? We prevent it by pressure garments and intralesional steroids. Okay, now some primary things about the dressings in burn. So which is the biosynthetic dressing we use in partial thickness burn? It is a BioBrain. Remember bio with bio. BioBrain is a biosynthetic dressing we used in partial thickness burn. Which of the following agent is contraindicated in second degree burn due to cytotoxicity? It is povidone iodine. Why? Because povidone iodine penetrates the raw area in the burn and it will cause cytotoxicity. So yes, povidone iodine, which is the common moisture or common type of antibiotic which we use in different types of wound, but it is completely contraindicated in burn patient. Okay, which is the main advantage of collagen dressing in burn patient? It causes epithelialization and reduces pain. It is the collagen is the only dressing or only lotion which causes epithelialization. There are different lotions which we are going to discuss, but none of them causes epithelialization. All of them causes decreased progress to the epithelialization, but collagen is the only dressing which causes epithelialization and it will cause reduced pain. So remember, important point. Now there are different dressings which are important in burn patient. The foremost important are the silver based agent. In that, silver sulfadiazine is the most commonly used broad spectrum antibiotic which we use commonly in the burn patient. It causes leukopenia, and so that is the reason we cannot use it for long term. Second is silver nitrate. The concentration is 0.5%. It is also antimicrobial, but it causes electrolyte imbalance. Okay, because it binds to the different electrolytes, and that is the reason if patient is already having electrolyte imbalance, we'll avoid giving or applying silver nitrate. Okay, last is nanocrystalline silver dressing. Nanocrystalline silver dressing is a newer agent. We also called it as Acticoat, and it is not usually present in primary health center because it is expensive. It is slow release and it causes less frequent changes. We should not use it in a primary dressing, first degree burn, because when we apply this dressing, one can use it for 2 to 3 days, and after 3 to 4 days we'll reapply it. Okay, so we use only in second to third degree burn. Okay, we cannot use, or we generally not use it in first degree burn. Now second is collagen membrane. Collagen membrane is derived from bovine skin and fish scales. It causes angiogenesis and epithelial migration. There will be decreased pain, as we already discussed, and increased healing speed because it causes epithelialization. Okay, it is semi-permeable and it is important or useful in the superficial or mid-dermal burn. Now next is BioBrain. BioBrain is the only biosynthetic composed dressing material which is which we used in clean superficial burns. Okay, and one more important thing about it is it falls when reepithelialization starts. Okay, and BioBrain is transparent, so we can watch the progress of wound healing when we use BioBrain as a dressing material. Next is hydrocolored or foam dressing. Hydrocolored dressing is occlusive, it maintains moist environment, it is comfortable and it is not adherent. So that is the reason we can use it every 3 to 5 days. No need to change it daily, and we avoid hydrocolored in infected burn. Okay. Next is mefenamic acetate. This is the only dressing type which we use in the patient where there is scar formation. Okay, why? Because even if there is scar, mefenamic acetate penetrates that scar and go deep. So it is the only dressing which we use in even if there is scar formation, but there is more chance of metabolic acidosis because there is a component of acetate. So if patient is prone or risk, there is risk of metabolic acidosis, then we avoid mefenamic acetate. Okay, so here are one liners. BioBrain is biosynthetic, it is adherent, and yes, it is transparent, so we can watch the wound healing. Okay, collagen is cheap, it is biological, and it promotes epithelial healing. We avoid povidone iodine in burn patient because it is cytotoxic, and Acticoat is a newer synthetic agent. The formula is nanocrystalline silver and it is a sustained release product. So we use it in a second and third degree burn where the dressing is prolongedly needed. We can change it every 3 to 5 days. So that's all about the burn. Yeah, it is a huge topic, but it is very important and it is very interesting. Okay, so revise it, solve some MCQs, and if you got some difficulties, then ask me on the WhatsApp. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much.